I always tell people that get to know your butcher. Your butcher can be a really great person to know because they will not just, give you great beef, but also educate you on beef. You can, at that point, then you can go to the meat aisle and pick out your own stuff if you want.
This is Taste, presented by Beef. It's what's for dinner. On behalf of the Beef Checkoff, I'm your host, Matt Rodbard. On this very special episode of This is Taste, it's all about beef, and we have a number of experts talking about the subject. First up is George Motz, the chef-owner of Hamburger America. Now, George knows a thing or two about beef, but we didn't focus only on the hamburger. We talked about all sorts of cuts and how George likes to shop at the grocery store all summer long. We also got some tips and tricks for preparing the beef before it hits the grill. We also spoke with Dr. Phil Bass, a meat science professor at the University of Idaho. Now, Phil is a former meat cutter and has worked in higher education in the science of beef for years. And we go over all sorts of topics about some innovation happening in meat science, including some brand new cuts that you're going to be finding at the grocery store in years to come. Finally, producer Clayton and I talk about our big summer of beef, our plans in the kitchen. We go back and forth about the braising and the grilling. This is such a great episode, all about beef, and I hope you enjoy it. George Motz, welcome to This is Taste. It's so great to see you. How you doing, man?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
We're going to be talking about grilling beyond the burger. I feel like Hamburger America, your breakout restaurant is what you're getting so much press for, but I want to hear about more. I want to hear about you as a home cook.
There's more. There's definitely more there.
You are, I would say, a passionate home cook. I check out your Instagram a lot, and I see you at home making many different dishes. You're cooking Asian food, Mexican food. I've seen it all. What is in general, what's your goal with cooking at home?
Honestly, it's just discovery. I mean, I cook at home. I think people think of me as a hamburger guy, and I don't like that. I do like it, for what it's worth, obviously, but I don't like the fact that people think that's all I know. And I am literally passionate about all food. And honestly, for me, it's more of a Zen moment for me. It's definitely it's my relaxation moment is when I can. People think, oh, you should take a break and get out of the kitchen and go do something else. No. For me, it's how I unwind.
Yeah,
as by sorting out the timing of things, the ingredients, and cooking and making people happy.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Cooking as therapy for the active chef. You're working these long shifts.
It's weird, but I do it for that reason.
Yeah,
I do it for that reason.
And I think a part of your home cooking is cooking with beef, but beyond the burger. As we mentioned, you're well known for burgers. But honestly, I've seen all sorts of steaks. I've seen kebabs. I'm like looking at your Instagram. Sorry, I'm just being honest.
That's okay.
I mean, it's cool. Like, I'm going to link to the show notes. You should follow George. It's a good follow for home cooking. So let's talk about beef cuts. What do you like to cook with? Are you drawn to a particular style of cooking with beef? Any specific preparation that you like at home?
I like to cook with every type of meat, every type of cut, everything. I love steaks. Because steaks are actually pretty easy to cook. People don't realize that, Most other foods out there are difficult. They're challenging, but they're fun. But to me, I think steaks are really, it's kind of low-hanging fruit in a way because it's easy to cook and the flavor is exactly what you expect if you cook it the right way.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said about cooking it the right way. We got medium rare guys, we got medium guys, we even got well done.
Yeah.
Do you feel like, is there a temperature that's ideal for cooking a steak?
It's funny. Yes. I mean, personally, I think it's medium to medium rare. But again, it depends on the cut, or if you're using what cut you're using, or what type of finished product you're using, which would be if you're using dry aged cuts. Dry aged cuts, sometimes you can overcook them pretty quickly. So I usually undercook them, but then I end up with a medium, and I'm okay with that. Pink inside there is really the way that you end up with the flavor that you want.
Yeah.
Overcooking, and there are some cuts you do. I mean, honestly, if I'm cooking like
flank
steak, it can be cooked through, and it still is full of flavor, and the flavor and the moisture is all coming from the fat. If you have a skirt steak, for example, that can be without a little bit of pink inside, it's still okay. There's so much flavor in there, especially, of course, if you've marinated that steak, which is great marinated. Then you don't need the cooking temperatures really depend on what cut you're working with.
Yeah, I think it's such a good call about the marinade, and we'll get a little bit into like some more marinades and creative ways of cooking with these thin cuts. But George, you're walking into your local grocery store, you're heading to the beef aisle. Is there like a method? Is there a strategy when looking at all that array of beef there?
I mean, the best thing to do is to go to a butcher, to talk to the butcher directly. I always tell people that get to know your butcher. Your butcher can be a really great person to know because they will not just, give you great beef, but also educate you on beef. You can, at that point, then you can go to the meat aisle and pick out your own stuff if you want. But you really need to go and talk to a butcher.
Yeah, I think that's a good call. So how do you get to know your butcher? Are you bringing them like a bottle of Jack Daniels? Are you like tipping them? I mean, what's your relationship with your butcher?
Which I engage with my butcher.
Okay,
and
good.
That's the most important thing. You don't have to give them any gifts or anything. That's so funny. I didn't thought of it. Maybe I do need to give them gifts. I didn't think of that.
I mean, even like a 6-pack.
No, I think their gift from you is your engagement.
Yeah.
If you show interest in what they're doing, they will open up like anything else. And if you show any kind of interest at all, say, what's the difference between this cut and that cut? They will absolutely open the doors and be excited that you're even taking the time to care. And you've also taken the time to not go to the supermarket and go to them and talk to them. Or you can also talk to the supermarket butcher, honestly. And you can talk to the Costco butcher.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it doesn't have to be like
the Costco butcher is amazing.
The guy with the mustache who's been like 8th generation. That's a cool butcher, but it could be literally the really nice person working at Costco in the meat department, wearing like the hard hat.
They're all nice.
Dude, Costco's awesome. Yeah, meat guys are nice. Yeah, you're right. Meat women. Yeah,
they all are. It's there. And but really, seriously, engaging in conversation with your butcher is the best thing you can do for your meat knowledge, and honestly for your belly.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so we're there we're at your butcher shop. We're at the aisle. We're thinking about what's for dinner, what's happening this weekend at the barbecue. Let's go over a couple cuts specifically that you like, that you think maybe a couple of the ones that we might know, maybe a couple we don't know. I don't know. Like, what do you like to buy in terms of beef?
I have a great range. For me, the best cuts of steak are going to be ribeye, and believe it or not, I just fell in love with the strip steak.
Oh,
strip steak is especially if you get a good dry aged, short dry aged strip steak. Your strip is fantastic. It's sort of foolproof.
George, fully agree. During the pandemic, I was ribeye guy. Before the pandemic, I was like ribeye guy. I like loved the fat cap. It was like such an easy cut to cook with, and still love it. But for me, I remember in 2020, my butcher shop was still open. I went full New York strip, and I just love the iron. It's irony. Mm-hmm. It's got a good beefy flavor.
I actually did the same thing. I actually rediscovered the New York strip steak during the pandemic.
Yeah.
There were restaurants that were closing and they couldn't stay open. They gave me a lot of their steaks. A lot of friends gave me steaks from restaurants that were closing, and I ended up with a lot of strip steak. And I thought, okay, well, I prefer ribeye. And then I realized that actually they're much easier to cook.
Yeah.
I mean, the ribeye still is like a flavor-packed, a wonderment. It's incredible what you can do with a ribeye, but it's actually harder to cook.
Yes.
I think the strip steak is much easier to cook. It's much more forgiving.
That's an interesting point. I agree. I feel like I do think the ribeye has the nice fat cap, but you can definitely overcook a ribeye.
Overcook it, or ribeye is also unique because there is a lot of different parts of the ribeye. If you're at the chuck end of the ribeye, you have something that's almost closer to a chuck steak. If you're at the other end of the ribeye, you have something that's a little more steakier, and it's less fat in a way.
Yeah.
And it's a little easier to, but you don't know if you're in a store, you don't know how to pick that. That's why you want to talk to your butcher.
Talk to your butcher.
And say, is this the chuck end or is this the other end?
Ooh, that's a great tip. Chuck end or the other end. Okay, let me ask you, when you're preparing a strip, how are you preparing? How are you getting ready to cook it? And the second part is, how are you cooking? Are you doing flat top, flat iron? Are you doing grill, open flame? What's your preferred method? My preferred method is unquestionably a grill. I think that being on a grill is very important. It's also very hard. It's very difficult to cook on a grill. People think it's a weekend warrior. I'm just going to go out there and cook on a grill. It's one of the most difficult ways to cook anything is over a live fire. Yeah. That's why people are, they spend so much time studying barbecue pit masters and live fire cooking, because those people are basically food geniuses. It's not easy to do. So to get out there in the weekend and make a steak, you really have to have it dialed in.
People like to cook in a pan or in the oven if you don't have an outdoor grill, which is fine. I'm not a fan. Personally, I'd rather put it over an open flame and then control it.
Yeah, I agree with you fully. It's really tough to do open flame cooking. My preference is taking the cast iron out to the grill.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
Just because like if I am in a tight space, when I was living in Brooklyn, I couldn't really do that, but I had an outdoor space at times when I was cooking at a friend's house, and I would bring the flat top out or the cast iron and do it that way because I think it seals in the flavor. But I think you're right. Live fire is really great. Take us back to before we even hit the flames and start the cooking.
Sure.
How are you preparing the steaks before you go onto the grill?
I hit it with only salt. That's it. I never use anything else but salt. It's just a kosher salt, flake, sea salt, whatever it is, on both sides, just before it goes on. You don't want to do it too early, so the salt will start to bind up the muscle fibers, and too soon.
Yeah.
You want to do it right before you go, and it will start to liquefy as you watch the liquids that are coming out of the steak will mix with the salt. But that's a good thing actually. You're almost making a little salt slurry there.
Yeah, no, I think you want it to liquefy a little bit.
Yeah,
right?
a little bit. Yeah, just a little bit. Yeah.
I like to do 1 or 2% by weight. Do you think about your amount of salt, or do you just like salt it nice?
I just salt it.
Yeah. No, I think either way is fine, but I always try to like weigh it and do 1 or 2%.
Oh.
Between 1 and 2%.
I might try that.
Try it with a digital scale, because you know what? Here's the thing: it's actually more salt than you think you need.
Oh,
you're
sure.
Doing it 1% by weight, but still, it really takes you there.
I believe that. Yeah, I don't like oversalting anything, so maybe I'll take that method.
You know what? Honestly, you just need to salt it enough that you're going to actually taste it in the cooking, right? Which is an obvious statement, but maybe not obvious, because you're not going to do a little sprinkle. That won't do anything.
So, actually, that point doesn't matter, because when you're doing that, it's really not for flavor. When you're salting, it's more for cooking. It's the interaction that the salt has with the cooking surface. If you're anywhere in South America, they always salt again after.
Yeah.
You sit I've been to many asados in Argentina or in Brazil when they're cooking steak at 1 o'clock in the morning. There's a big dish of salt in the middle of the table. Or the asador, who's in Argentina, will just take the beef and hit it with another spray of salt as it's hitting the table. Or even after they've cut it.
I have a quick follow-up. When are you eating steak at 1 o'clock in the morning? And how are you getting to that point where you're having steak at 1 o'clock in the morning?
I mean, if you're in Brazil, you're probably eating steak at 1 o'clock in the morning. That's just how it goes.
It's just how it goes.
That's just how it goes. And I had to roll with it, and I had no problem with that. But you're also drinking and you're eating steak. It's living. I mean, you realize when you leave Brazil and Argentina that these people know how to live.
Absolutely, total beef culture there, and same in America too. We've got this really prominent beef culture that we're talking about today. That is part of our American heritage.
Absolutely.
You call your place Hamburger America, and really it kind of ties into that. And you didn't think we were going to not talk about the burger, obviously.
Well, I assume we would.
Okay. Well, I wanted to zoom out a little bit. Your restaurant downtown in Manhattan is just such a joy to visit. I've been many times, and I just love the way you run hospitality, but you also have really great beef there. So I wanted to ask you, at your restaurant, how do you think about sourcing your beef at the restaurant? And how do you, what's your QC, your quality control process to make sure your beef is really excellent each time?
The best way is to work with the same person for 17 years. That's the best solution. And there are butchers, but there are large-scale butchers, Schweid & Sons, who I've been working with for literally 17 years. They have been donating the highest quality beef they can possibly get to me for many, many years, for all of the pop-ups and all the special events I've done. So it made perfect sense that whenever we moved into the restaurant that they were going to be provided my beef. And not only am I using Schweid & Sons, I'm also using the same beef I've been using for many, many years. It is a 75-25 ground chuck primal, and that's it. Nothing to it. But it's also certified Angus beef. So it is the highest possible quality we can get for the restaurant. And it makes a difference because there's only a few ingredients in the hamburger. Yeah. If you're going to cover up a burger with lots of seasoning and sauces and stuff, you don't really need to have the highest quality. But for this, I mean, we only have 3 ingredients in the burger, really, pretty much: bun, cheese, and meat. You have to have the highest quality beef.
So many follow-up questions because first off, 75-25, aggressive, but also really, really cool. I mean, can you buy that at the grocery store?
Definitely. So we're moving into a nice phase of hamburger right now, especially in America, because you can actually buy now something that's actually fattier than 80/20 in the supermarket. Finally.
Yeah, because I go to like a Walmart or I go to like my local butcher, and it's always 80/20 is the max. 90/10 for.
No, you can't do that. No.
Can't do that. That's good for maybe like taco night if it's
exactly
like, want something very lean, but man, not for a hamburger.
No, for a hamburger you need fat. You need fat in there for sure. And this is where 80/20 is actually fine for a burger. It's wonderful, but you really want to push it in the right direction. 75/25.
Okay, so let's actually get into cooking the burger at home because I think a lot of our listeners are interested in, George. How do you think about bringing the Hamburger America experience to the home? You've written cookbooks about making burgers at home. There's a real art to it. So take us through your ideal home burger.
My ideal home burger is cooked inside on a flat top or in a skillet, and it's cooked with relatively high heat, medium to high heat. And I like to smash burgers. I'm a smash burger guy. So for me, it's a ball of beef that's been smashed in a cast iron skillet with nothing more than salt.
So very, very, very important distinction. You're not open flame grilling a burger.
I can't. It depends on what I'm trying to create.
Right.
Honestly. So, but that is a great burger. It can be great. Again, it's very difficult to cook over open flame sometimes. So I like to do what you were just talking about also and take the flat iron or the skillet or something or the cast iron and put that on the flame grill. And what's nice about it, if you have a larger grill like a Weber or something and a smaller pan, you can actually move the pan with the spatula around the grill top. Mm-hmm. If it gets too hot, it's too cold, you keep sliding it back over the hot spot, cold spot.
That's what I like to do as well.
For control.
You can slow down the cooking. So say you took a bunch of burger orders, but then, everyone's like poking around and they don't have their buns ready.
Yeah.
Or like, catching they're refilling their beer in the keg. And you're like, man, your burger's ready, but they're not. You slide it off, you slide it back on. Great point there. And then so you're trying to get 75/25 if you can for the home?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can. It's out there. Or even 80/20 is okay. 80/20 ground chuck is probably the best way to go.
So we're talking chuck is the one you like.
Yeah.
No, fancy blends.
You don't need fancy blends. Sorry, everybody. You just don't. It's a waste of time. Because think about it. If you look at an animal, right, and you look at the where those cuts they're talking about are coming from, like the short rib they're all actually just near the chuck primal anyway.
Yeah.
The only thing that's actually not near the chuck primal people like to use is brisket, which I think is a little kind of insane because brisket. If you think about a brisket, if you cook a brisket, it takes hours and hours and hours to get it to cook correctly. So even if you put 10% brisket in there, it's not going to cook the way you really want to. The beauty of chuck is that it's perfect every single time. If you took an entire chuck primal, right, whatever it is, 20 pounds or something, and put it through a grinder, you have the perfect hamburger meat, period. You don't have to blend or do anything or add fat or anything. It's probably pretty perfect at 75 to 80% lean.
Are we grinding our own beef at home?
No, I wouldn't do that. You can. I think it's actually good to do for learning, to try to teach yourself those things. But you really should leave it to the professionals.
Yeah, I think the home grinder, it's cool to have. It's a nice toy if you have a big kitchen.
Yeah.
It's a nice thing to have on the countertop, but man, I don't know about that.
But butchers do it every day.
Butchers do it every day.
They have all day long.
And they can
do it the right way.
Exactly. I don't think.
Also, but people don't realize that butchers keep their grinders in the walk-in because they want to make sure that the blades are cold. The big mistake people make at home is that they pull out their grinder and then it's warm. It came out of the cabinet. They wouldn't think to throw it in the freezer overnight or keep it in the fridge.
That's such a good point.
Yeah. This is why the professionals need to be doing this.
It's like why you aren't making your own croissant at home.
Or doing self-surgery.
Or doing self-surgery. This is just keeping it real there, George. I like that. No, I love it. Self-surgery. I never thought about that.
You wouldn't do it, right?
No, you wouldn't do it. So say you find yourself, in a situation where you have to use charcoal. Charcoal is the only way you're going to get this burger cooked. What is like the worst thing you can do when cooking with charcoal?
Easily the worst thing is to use lighter fluid. It's totally unnecessary because it really just imparts the flavor of lighter fluid to your food pretty much right away.
Yeah. I think it's really, really, really true. It's like we just don't avoid the lighter fluid or the charcoal that has built-in lighter fluid.
Right. One of the best ways to use a chimney, the inexpensive chimney lighter. The only downside to that is that it involves a lot of newspaper, and newspaper creates an incredible amount of smoke.
Yeah.
I actually have this product called the Luft lighter from Sweden. It is basically a high-powered hairdryer that can ignite a charcoal briquette in 20 to 30 seconds. And
Wow.
there's no smoke. There's no smoke from the newspaper. There's none of that stuff at all. And it is compact. I have a battery-operated one that's amazing. I have one that plugs in that's super powerful, and I love this thing.
It sounds amazing, George. I feel like I'm gonna like search Amazon or go to my local hardware store and see if they have a loop lighter, because it's like adding that stream of air and hot air, so you can go one by one and light up your briquettes.
Yeah,
right?
it's applying science, applying science directly to your outdoor activities. I love it so much. I love when people think about these things and create products like this.
So you're in the process of updating your book, Hamburger America, and I wanted to find out, do you have any recent burger discoveries from the road?
Yes, I was just in Illinois.
Oh, cool.
And we did a friend of mine did a drive through the heart of Illinois, to go and follow the Lacey Burger Trail. And I realized it's amazing how people think of the Lacey Burger as a trend, a smashed, thin, crispy Lacey Edge burger as a trend. It's a new thing. It's been around for 100 years.
Oh my God! So let me ask you: Are you seeing any like special preparations, any creative ways of making these burgers?
Nothing special at all. That's the beauty of it. Is that I went out there thinking, I want to make sure I'm still making something similar. I'm making a smash burger in the restaurant. It's a classic smash. It has a crispy Maillard on both sides of the burger, and it's served with nothing more than mustard and pickle and onion on a toasted bun. And when I went out there, I realized that 90% of these places are doing exactly that. And I was actually happy to see in my discovery that we're doing it the right way, that we are honoring history and we're making these smash burgers correctly, as based on the trilogy, the mustard, pickle, onion, on a classic smash burger.
Speaking of legends in the game, you have a really cool thing you do at Hamburger America. You call them Hamburger Heroes, and you invite these kind of legends from around America to come to New York to cook their burgers, and then you leave it on your menu. I mean, we're talking about beef. These are actually like the people who have been cooking with beef in unique ways for the longest in our country's history, and beef is so associated with American cooking. And you call it Hamburger America. It all kind of like comes together, and I love the way you frame it. But let me ask you about the Hamburger Heroes. Who have been some past Hamburger Heroes, and who should we look out for when visiting your restaurant?
Well, we had our first Hamburger Hero show up at the restaurant, which was Glenn Fieber from Solly's in Wisconsin, with his Butterburger that arguably invented. He didn't invent it actually, but his family invented many, many years ago, in the 1930s.
Well, George, I had that Butterburger and Glenn's burger. Wow, that was a lot.
You got it on your shirt. I remember that.
I got it on my shirt. Absolutely could not. I had to be somewhere afterwards, and I had this butter all over my shirt. That is typical way I eat burgers. But like, wow, there was a lot of butter on that guy.
It's a Butterburger. It's butter as a condiment. The idea is, the nice thing about sitting at the counter at Hamburger America is that you will get some of the butter in its semi-solid state. You want to be able to bite through like solid, semi-solid butter to have the experience of a true Butterburger. But then, of course, the stuff that's melted on the plate, you find yourself with that last bite dipping the bun back into the butter on the plate because you just want to get a little more butter.
You just want to get that. It's like you know that you need to like sop up any leftover gravy. We've been trained, but then when it's butter, it makes it even better.
Oh yeah.
And then let me ask you then, anybody coming up in the future that you want to announce?
Yeah. So right now we have Autumn Weston brought with her family's secret olive sauce from Weston's Kewpie in Lansing, Michigan.
Love
so that's it. They actually drove in 20 gallons of olive sauce for the burger, and it's not enough. So I'm actually going to be heading back out myself personally to Michigan to get another few gallons for the restaurant.
You're road tripping to Michigan to pick up the olive sauce.
Yeah, we're going to make a couple stops along the way. And other burger spots.
That's a road trip for you.
Oh yeah, it's a fun road trip.
Do you ever do like a fast food burger on the way just to keep it, real?
Sometime, if I have time, yeah. I'll do a steak and shake.
Yeah, my God, that's the one. I love that. You'll find those in Michigan. All right, last question. I want to ask you, what are your big beefy plans for the summer? What do you want to make with beef this summer? Is there like a cut, or is there like a preparation, or is there some project? And it doesn't have to be on the grill. We know that, you can do beef, you can do bourguignon, even in the summertime. I'm a very big believer that, seasonal cooking is fun and we get into it, but you can make beef stew in August. It's fine. It's delicious.
It's true. Yeah. I like to just continue on with the stuff I've been playing with beef. I love to be able to have the time which I don't sometimes.
Yeah.
When I do have the time, I do focus on cooking outside of the restaurant, and I do as much grilling as humanly possible outside. I have in my backyard. I think I counted once. I have 14 different grilling and cooking apparatus outside in the backyard because I like to be able to pick and choose. You know, I have this thing called a channel griller, which is basically it's for kebabs. It's a kebab griller. It's about 8 inches wide, which is how big a kebab really should be, and it's about 3 feet long.
Wow.
And it's nothing more than just a bed of charcoal. And this sounds amazing to us in America, but pretty much the rest of the world, use these things on the street all the time to make kebab food and cook. Street cooking, street food. What that comes on a stick is usually cooked on some kind of a trough or channel griller.
I'm Googling channel griller and picking one up from my backyard.
Yeah, that's also called like a party griller.
Yeah.
So it's a good one. That's a great one. They're not expensive, and I love these things. That's one. I mean, I've got so many different types of cooking.
So there's a party in George's backyard this summer. We'll be there. George Motz, thank you so much for joining This Is Taste.
Thanks for having me.
Dr. Phil Bass, welcome to This Is Taste. How are you doing?
I'm great, man. How are you?
I'm terrific. Now I've been talking to George Motz all about beef, and I think it's time to now call in the big boys. We're gonna get a doctor in the study of beef, and really you're at the University of Idaho and you're a meat science professor. I have to ask you first up, what's for dinner in Troy, Idaho? What's on your table last night?
Well, interesting you asked that. Ribeye steaks, that's one of our favorites of the whole family. We like fat, we like beef fat, and ribeyes are robust and very, very tasty, easy to grill, and it's one of our family favorites.
That's amazing. So what's the preparation? How are you doing it?
If you have good beef, it's not much of a preparation. Salt and pepper. And then goes right to the grill. We're a family, and if I had time for charcoal, I'd probably do that, but we tend to get busy sometimes, so we just go right to a propane grill, and cook it to about a medium rare degree of doneness, and away we go.
Where you go. So, Phil, you grew up in a livestock family around meat cutting and the whole industry. So let me ask you, how did you get into the science behind beef?
So that's an interesting story, and honestly, I grew up cutting meat, but not professionally, and the family never did it professionally. I come from a family of Italian carpenters that also raised livestock, and we cut our own meat, and so it was very much more just for family purposes. We made sausage, we cut beef, lamb, pork, things like that. But I really started getting more into it when I went to university at Cal Poly, California Polytechnic in San Luis Obispo, California, in the Central Coast of California. And I learned from a meat science professor there, Dr. Rudy Wooten, who happened to also be my academic advisor. And I just really loved the whole process. I love the art of it. I think it's something that we need to continue to recognize as an art, as a trade. I think there's a lot of career opportunity in the meats world, but to make this more of a profession and become more of an instructor in this, I needed to go down the path of meat science. And meat science, my true meat science path began when I started doing research at Cal Poly when I was working on my master's degree, and that was with Dr. Bob Delmore, who's now at Colorado State University. We were looking at some of the value of different breed types and growth technologies that are available for the industry to use to improve feed efficiency, improve resource utilization, things like that. And that led me to Colorado State. And in fact, I went to Colorado State and was done and graduated there before Dr. Bob Delmore went there. But I started working with Dr. Keith Belk and spent some time both looking at some of the challenges that we're facing in the meat industry. And at that time, we were considering just how big cattle were getting. And interestingly enough, that research has not stopped. all the way to today, where that's what our team does, is look at how can we come up with practical ideas of improving the beef carcass and beef quality, with means that can be easily used at a packing house or at a grocery store or at a restaurant. And so that's kind of the direction we're going right now. And that's my short story of meat science.
Well, it's so fascinating because as end users, as the home cooks who are going to the grocery store and buying beef, I'd love to get a sense of how your research about the consistency of beef leads to, like, how does it translate to what we're actually buying in the grocery store?
There's so much that goes into it, and we don't have time to spend several hours on this. And in fact, I teach entire courses on what it takes to make a good meat eating experience, especially on the beef side of things. Beef has something that the other species don't have, and that's a depth of flavor. Pork is great. Pork is a great inexpensive meat product. Chicken, it's not as inexpensive as most people might think, but still very versatile. Beef is also a very versatile item, but it brings with it that depth of flavor that the other species have a hard time reaching. And when it translates to consistency and quality at the grocery store, we're thinking about what is happening on the live animal side. What are our farmers and ranchers doing to prepare that animal to become high quality meat products later on? And most of that begins with genetics. We have to start with a good quality animal. The right bull and the right cow make nature. And in the end, hopefully they had genetic potential to pass on that's focusing on quality. I like to think of the analogy that you can have a really great variety of wine grapes, but if you don't have the right soil conditions and you don't have the right management, it's hard to make really good wine. And so it does also take the management side of things. And that's where feeding the animal appropriately, maintaining a high, what we call plane of nutrition, making sure that they have adequate nutrition throughout their life. And I'm a big proponent of giving those animals concentrate. So a lot of people might think of that just as a corn-based diet. We raise a lot of corn in the United States, but there's up here in the Northwest, we actually feed a lot of potato byproducts. Either way, we mix that into their ration. Still has a little bit of hay and a little bit of silage or something like that, different roughages that are going to be mixed in. But we give them that starch content, and that helps to put down some really great fat. What we're targeting is not just fat on the outside of the animal, but on the inside of the muscle. And the best fat that we're looking for is what's called marbling. It's intramuscular fat. Little flecks of white fat that's going to be interspersed throughout the muscles, especially one like the ribeye, one of my favorites. And that fat inside is going to lead to the flavor, the tenderness, the juiciness.
We just heard from George Motz, and he was talking about the grocery store and thinking about how do you buy beef to really enhance your summer grilling experience. I've been meaning to ask a professional like yourself, do you have a great, sneaky good cut that works extremely well for the summer backyard that maybe we don't know about?
Well, yes, but the challenge will be, can you find one? This is where maybe the meat sciences and the retail sector haven't quite caught up yet. But I would tell you, as far as steaks that are more readily available, beyond say like your ribeyes and your strip loins and your tenderloins and things like that, think about sirloin cuts. Usually they're going to be a great value, especially ones that are probably coming from the top sirloin. So you have your top sirloin center cuts, which are going to be more like a baseball. They're usually pretty lean, but still pretty tender and a great value. The top sirloin cap muscle, some might know it as the culotte, is a great steak as well, and very similar in texture and tenderness to a strip loin. And again, a lower cost item in that regard, but super for the grill. The culotte can also be found in a roast size. It's triangular in shape, but it's not to be confused with the tri-tip. The tri-tip also is a great item for the grill. That's a good value as well. And it's going to also have kind of more of that ribeye flavor because it's going to have a heavier marbling to it. So, I mean, man, I could get really excited about all these different meat cuts. I'd tell you, if you do have a more eclectic butcher that's nearby that can do a little bit more fanciful type cutting, there's a steak called the Denver steak. It's actually out of the shoulder. It's highly marbled. It's the cut that at a certain part of the animal becomes the short rib, which is more of a slow cook braising or barbecue type item. But if you can get a Denver steak, don't get it cut too thick. You'll actually want to cook it to about a medium degree of doneness. That will be your best tenderness on that. And man, it's an amazing eating experience.
Oh my gosh.
Mostly because of the marbling.
Man, Phil, I got to tell you, I just cooked with a Denver steak. I was making a Korean beef stew called tenjanjjigae, and I needed a nice thin cut that had nice marbling. It's not like a beef-driven dish, but it needed accents. And I found that Denver cut at my local Stop and Shop, and wow, did it deliver. I love that you mentioned that.
Yeah. Well, then that's awesome to hear that it's out there because not a lot of grocery stores are to that level yet. But for those who are interested in providing a really cool eating experience for the customers, I think it sounds like there's some out there that are willing to go to that step. And man, it's a great steak.
So, Phil, let me ask you, what does a meat science professor teach his students? I mean, do you guys actually go into a kitchen and taste the beef?
So that's interesting you say that. At the very end of the semester for when I teach my meat science class, we absolutely have what I call the sensory lab, which is just a selfish way of saying I'm going to cook some brisket for my friends. We get somewhere between 40 and 50 students a year in our meat science class here at the University of Idaho. And we do everything in that class. We start out with just basic animal handling and why it's so important for animals to be to have a good animal welfare when you're raising these animals all the way up until the point of what we call harvest. So that's the slaughter process. And then we go through those processes. So we'll slaughter beef and lamb and pigs in the class. Those carcasses that are produced from those animals are then going to be fabricated. That's a fancy way for butchering, taken down to the individual steaks and roasts. From there, we'll talk about the different pieces and parts, but we also talk about the biochemistry that's happening in the muscle, in the live animal during the harvesting process, all the way down to when we're aging meat and the enzymes that are involved, and then even into what we call further processing. So when we're making sausage and bacon and hams and roast beef and things like that, corned beef, we talk about all of the different chemical sciences that are involved in food science, but it's very meat centric. But the other cool thing about meat science is that we learn a lot about anatomy. We cover anatomy of the animals and how different muscles in different parts of the animal, because of their function, lead to different eating experiences. And then on top of all that, we cover food safety. You know, it's important to make sure that folks are understanding the proper way of going through handling meat products and making sure that it's not only tasty, but safe to eat.
When you're talking about fabrication and you're talking about maybe working with a more ambitious butcher, you're at the cutting edge, pun intended, of beef cutting. What are some more innovative cuts or techniques that you're seeing in the marketplace, and how does that translate to maybe new recipes and new ways of thinking about cooking with beef?
Yeah, you know, there's a couple different directions I want to go there. First off, I'll brag on some of our own students here who have helped to develop new meat cuts. There's a small muscle at the base of the top sirloin that it's very unknown, with the exception of a handful of butchers in North America, but because I learned from a few of these more eclectic butchers, we've been able to peel this piece out. The muscle is called the gluteus accessorius muscle. not a great marketing name, of course. And so we're just calling it the top sirloin tender right now. And hopefully somebody more ambitious can teach me a better way of selling that item. It's a steak item that comes out of the animal pretty much already portion controlled. You don't have to do anything but pull it off of the top sirloin, and then you skin a little bit of connective tissue or silver skin off the outside, and it's ready to go. Throw it right on the grill. It's very lean, but very, very tender, and has a very robust sirloiny kind of flavor, and that's the best way we can describe it. Beyond that, there's a handful of cuts in the round. Something that folks that we don't think about the round as a piece. So the hind leg, the big hind leg, we don't think of that as a piece that's really grill ready. But there's a muscle called the top round cap. It's the gracilis muscle, and the top round cap, when you pull it off of the top round, it resembles a skirt steak. It seems as if skirt steak has become a very popular item in both the culinary world and the retail world. And so we just kind of need more of that kind of cut. And the top round cap is one that can provide that. And it's lesser known. It's often just left on as a part of a top round roast or as part of a London broil. Last couple things that I'll mention are items that are beyond just the traditional carcass. And so beef cheek meat. Oh my gosh. If you like a really robust, deep flavored piece of meat, it's really good if you do some braising or stewing or that kind of stuff. But beef cheek meat can be a really delightful eating experience. The sweetbreads, so that's the thymus gland. It's right at the base of the neck on the animal, but that comes out during the harvesting process, and so it's not left on your traditional carcass. But those could be either braised or even fried.
Oh yeah.
And then yeah. Oh, fantastic. I mean, if you like a really umami kind of flavor, a little bit more texture to it, but kind of almost a little more fatty, it's so delicious. And then it's so amazing to see the popularity of oxtail anymore. That was kind of just a poor person's cut that kind of went by the wayside. We exported a lot of them, but the value of that has really grown in the United States, as well as the tongue. And so, we're not talking about our classic cuts anymore. We're talking about different ways of experiencing that.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm the biggest lengua taco fan you're going to find. And when I'm in Chicago or LA and I'm finding the best Mexican food in America, I'm going for the lengua. What a great cut.
Yes, it is. Very popular now. Yep.
Phil, let me close and ask you, it's summertime. What are your beef adventures planned for the summer? You got the grill going. You've got maybe you're taking a few weeks off from teaching. Are there any ambitious beef plans that you have?
I'm becoming more and more of a fan of the smokers right now, and so and I never thought I would be interested in pellet grill smoking, but I am. And I kind of surprised myself with that, but I like the precision that comes with it, and so I've been experimenting a lot more with that. I like how you can use it to just impart some flavor and then go over to your traditional, say, propane grill or charcoal grill and get that high heat afterwards, but start with that nice, subtle, deeper smoke. But then also, I mean, we shouldn't just think of summertime as grilling. I think summertime is just a great time to enjoy good food. You just happen to eat it outside more. And so taking cuts out of the shoulder of the beef carcass and putting those on the smoker and treating them just like you would a brisket, something like an old fashioned pot roast out of the chuck roll. Put that on the smoker, and if you cook it long enough, it'll shred like a good pork shoulder. There's also some really great pieces out of the arm roast of the beef carcass. Put that on the smoker for a couple of hours, and the texture is fantastic on that. It's a very, very tender piece of meat as well. So I'm probably going to spend more time playing around with the smoker, honestly, and seeing what kind of delights we can generate from that.
Last question: how do you do your burger?
Oh man, fatty. First off,
yes, my man, that's the way to do it.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of George Motz. I've had the chance to work with him in the past, and he and I have similar perspectives on the burger. Grilling's great, but flat top or skillet is got to be probably the best way of cooking a burger.
100% agree with you. Keep the juices in.
Keep it there, yeah.
Dr. Phil Bass, what a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining This Is Taste.
Excellent. Thanks.
I'm here with our producer, Clayton, and I wanted to wrap up this very special beefy episode of This Is Taste with some final thoughts about how we're cooking with beef this summer. You know, we talked to George Motz, and he gave us this great intel coming from the restaurant point of view, from the chef's point of view. And we talked to Dr. Phil Bass, coming from more of like an academic point of view, but both are big fans of beef, and they really gave us a lot of ideas. So with all of this in mind, Clayton, I wanted to go over some of our recipe ideas and grails for this summer. I'm going to start and say, right now, the New York strip is top of mind. I've been a sirloin fan for a long time. I've been a ribeye fan for a long time, but really, I've fallen in love with the New York strip. To me, the New York strip is the most irony, flavorful cut that I'm going to get for that price point. I love doing it. And the way I do it is I always salt about 1% to 2% by weight, and I leave it on there for at least 4 hours, if not longer. I want that salt to soak in. I want it to really like flavor the cut. And I'm always going to put it on my cast iron. And I'm going to grill it on high heat. I'm going to cook it on high heat for about 4 to 5 minutes each side. And I'm going to check temperature. And for me, that is like the simplest way to enjoy beef. But we're going to go back and forth, Clayton. What do you think? What you have an idea, I know.
Well, I love a New York strip, obviously, because New York City,
Oh,
best city in the world.
Truly.
So why wouldn't the cut of beef be the best?
A namesake cut for sure.
Absolutely. I like to do a little bit of slow braising short ribs.
Ooh, I love that. Nice. Tell me more.
Brown it in the Dutch oven, and then you add some red wine, some beef stock, some Italian aromatics like thyme and oregano, and then you got to braise it for 3 hours.
Yeah.
On low. You got to do it. You got to take the time. I mean, that's the thing. Crack it open a beer. If you don't drink, crack open an NA.
Yeah, man.
And just let that thing braise.
Yeah. Take it out of the pan, right? And then you're just serving it, you're slicing it off.
Oh, yeah.
I love it. So, you know, for me, I love that you call it short ribs, because for me, short ribs in Korean cooking is kalbijim, which is similarly braised, but it's not in red wine. It's in like a puree of Asian pear and sesame oil and a little bit of soy sauce. And that's kind of the base of it. And I'm doing the same technique. I'm doing it low and slow in a Dutch oven for 3 hours. I've also used a pressure cooker in the past, and that speeds it up a bit.
Yeah.
Until it's fall off the bone.
Oh.
Some places actually put a little bit of cheese on the top of it and use a little blowtorch if you want to get creative.
Matt, do you have a blowtorch at home?
You know what? I do. And to me, I gotta have a blowtorch not just for brulee, but for a little bit of like this and that on top of a short rib. And for me, the next kind of big idea I have is I want to take my burger game to the next level. I want to push my butcher to go above the 80-20. So it's 80% lean, 20% fat. I'm going to seek out. I have a great butcher in my town. His name is Sam's Butcher. I'm going to see if he can do 75-25. I'm just going to see if they'll humor me with that, because I think as Phil Bass has said and as George has said, you know, adding a little more fat to your ground beef is going to give it all that flavor. And I always do it to a medium rare, and I feel like that to me is the best way to do a burger. Clayton, do you have any other ideas about beef?
Well, I like, especially in the summer, I like some carne asada.
Oh,
you use some flank steak, and you marinate it. You know, you can use fruit juices like orange juice, soy sauce, sometimes just olive oil, but you're adding some garlic, some chili powder, paprika, black pepper. Put it in a Ziploc overnight if you can.
Yeah.
But, I mean, a few hours is good, but you got to do overnight. And then you grill it. You grill it to medium rare, slice it, wrap it in a tortilla, add whatever vegetables you want. Salsas, whatever, your accoutrement. I love it.
I love it. Great call on the carne asada at home. Lots of ways to do it. Time is going to be really your friend there. And also, I'll just add, you know, what Phil Bass told us, lengua, like beef tongue. I love that. I've never actually attempted to make lengua on my own. I feel like I'm going to also go to Sam's and be like, hey, man, you're giving me the 75-25 cut of ground beef, this really nice blend. Throw in a tongue, because I want to try to do like a marinated beef tongue. That to me is so terrific.
We had some lingua tacos on our trip.
Oh, yeah, we did, didn't we?
Yeah.
Out in Las Vegas, right?
I think it actually was in Chicago. I mean,
Chicago.
Chicago.
We've been on the road all summer, man. It's been crazy.
Yeah.
So this is you're reminding me of that beautiful Chicago lingua we did have. I really like that. I'm going to close and just say, honestly, my last idea for the summer is I'm going back to the ribeye. I know I started and said I like the strip over the ribeye, but you know what? I've changed my mind.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I like going to the butcher and actually getting it boneless. Because a boneless ribeye, it's going to cost more, yes. But if you can get the bone out and have them a really nice, well-marbled ribeye steak, it's really going to be your friend. It's going to be one of those cuts that you can be a little bit more, I would say, aggressive with the cooking, because the marbling is going to help you win over your crowd, because it's going to be so tender and there's going to be no bone to fuss with.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do it, serve your guests each a ribeye steak if you're being all fancy. But honestly, you could just slice it thin, put it on the table, dress it with some great olive oil, flaky Maldon salt or any kind of salt, and maybe some herbs on top, and you've got this platter, perfectly cooked ribeye. Oh, I feel like for summer, that's what I want to do.
Well, Matt, I'm so glad that when you thought of beef, you thought of me.
Clayton, I thought of you, but also I thought of you, listeners. I felt like we needed to have an episode that dedicated to one of our favorite summertime ingredients and our summertime activities, which is grilling outside. And really, I hope you took a lot away from this episode. Thank you so much for joining this very special episode of This Is Taste. This special episode is supported by beef. It's What's for Dinner on behalf of the Beef Checkoff. This Is Taste is hosted by Eliza Abarbanel and me, Matt Rodbard. The show is produced by Shalia Harris and Pat Stango and edited by Clayton Gumbert. Theme music by Steve Rydell. Visit Taste online at tastecooking.com and make sure to subscribe to our newsletter for updates on all cool things that are happening.